It's easy to think that eating healthy has to be expensive. We're paying $7, $8, even $9 for plastic tubs of power greens that are half wilted before we even get them home. And overall, the simple act of eating has become ridiculously expensive. But while we're stressed out at the checkout counter, the highest protein, most vitamin-rich plants in North America are growing for free in our own backyards. Most Americans call them weeds, and even pay money to get rid of them. Today on Edible America, I'm going to show you how to stop paying for lower quality nutrition. We're looking at 7 prolific plants that are as easy to identify as a garden tomato and carry a bigger nutritional punch than anything in the produce aisle. Tax-free. Let's get started. I will repeat it until I'm blue in the face. If you forage no other wild plants, the dandelion is the one you should grab. Why am I so adamant about this? Because the dandelion is the ultimate zero-failure plant. It is the absolute best starting point for any beginner because it removes the 2 biggest barriers to foraging: fear and waste. Think about your typical garden vegetables. Usually you're only eating one part, the fruit, the leaf, or the root. But with the dandelion, every single inch of the plant from the bright yellow petals down to the bottom of the taproot is edible and useful. You aren't just picking a weed, you're harvesting a salad green, a gourmet fritter, a caffeine-free coffee substitute, and a medicinal powerhouse all at once. Nutritionally, it's basically a free multivitamin. While people are spending a fortune on vitamin K supplements at the health food store, a single cup of dandelion greens can provide over 500% of your daily requirement. It's also packed with more vitamin A and calcium than almost anything you'll find in a plastic clamshell at the grocer. But the real reason it's my number 1 for beginners is the safety net. In North America, there is no such thing as a deadly dandelion look-alike. Even the plants that mimic it, like cat's ear and hawkweed, are generally edible. They just might not be as tender or tasty. This gives you the peace of mind to actually enjoy the process without the botany anxiety. I get it, not everyone wants to be a botanist. And in reality, you don't have to be to forage. You don't need a degree or a stack of dusty textbooks to grab a meal out of your yard. Think about it. You probably recognize a tomato or a carrot without thinking twice. These wild plants are no different. Once you see them a few times, they become just as familiar as the produce in your fridge. Foraging isn't about memorizing thousands of Latin names. It's about rebuilding a relationship with the plants around you. It's about common sense, observation, and most importantly, rejecting the notion that you have to pay to eat. If you find dandelion leaves a bit too bitter for your taste, just look for the plants growing in the shade or catch them early in the spring before the flowers bloom. That's when the flavor is at its peak. Or like mustard or collard greens, just add a pinch of sugar when cooking them. Another easy forage is lamb's quarters, and it's my favorite green, wild or otherwise. It tastes almost exactly like the more nutritious spinach. In fact, once you start eating this, you might find that store-bought spinach tastes a little thin and watery by comparison. In the foraging world, we often call this wild spinach or goosefoot because of the shape of its leaves, and it is arguably one of the most successful weeds to come to North America. Lamb's quarters is a nutritional heavyweight that puts garden-grown vegetables to shame with more protein, more calcium, and more vitamin C than anything you can buy on the produce aisle. For a beginner, the beauty of lamb's quarters is how easy it is to identify once you spot it. If you look at the underside of the leaves, or the new growth at the very top, you'll find a fine white flour-like powder. It's not dust or mold, it's a natural coating that actually makes the leaves water-resistant. That one feature alone makes it incredibly beginner-friendly. Once you notice lamb's quarters, you'll literally see it everywhere. And you can use it exactly like you'd use spinach or kale. Saute it with some onions, Throw it in a soup or steam it down with a little butter. My favorite way is to saute it into an omelet. It holds its texture much better than commercial greens and has a rich, earthy flavor that feels substantial. You can even make your favorite spinach dip from it. It's one of those plants that makes you realize just how much we've lost by narrowing our diets down to just a few approved grocery store vegetables. It's free, it's literally everywhere, and it's without doubt one of the best tasting greens you'll ever put on your plate. The only plant on this list that has the potential to hurt you is the stinging nettle. But don't let that scare you off. That sting is actually a beginner's best friend. It's one of the few plants that will literally tell you exactly what it is the moment you touch it. In the foraging world, we call that positive identification. Once you get past the name, you're looking at what is arguably the most powerful land-based plant for protein and minerals. Nettle is a high-protein heavyweight. Per cup, it's packing a level of iron and magnesium that makes store-bought kale look like iceberg lettuce. It's been used for centuries as a spring tonic to wake up the body because it's so incredibly dense with nutrients. Now, for the hurt part, all you need is a pair of gloves and a long-sleeve shirt. The sting comes from tiny hollow hairs filled with formic acid. But the second you hit those leaves with boiling water, or dry them out for tea, the sting is completely neutralized. It vanishes. What you're left with is a deep, savory, almost meaty tasting green that makes the best wild soup or pesto you've ever tasted. I love nettle because it demands a little bit of respect and a little bit of process, but the reward is a free, high-protein superfood that most people are terrified of. Once you learn to handle it, you'll stop seeing a painful weed and start seeing one of the most valuable crops on the North American continent. Speaking of that sting, it's actually a potent remedy for joint pain. If you want to know more about that, check out the video in the card. And tap that like button if you've ever tried any of these weeds before. Purslane is another favorite. While it does have a toxic look-alike, don't let that intimidate you. The plant people worry about is called spurge, and the difference is obvious the moment you actually look at the leaves. Purslane has thick, rounded, succulent leaves. They're meaty and full of water, almost like a tiny jade plant. Spurge, on the other hand, has thin, flat, papery leaves. If you're still unsure, that's when you go to the stem. If you break a purslane stem, you get a clear, watery juice. If you break spurge, it oozes a thick, milky white sap. Once you see that contrast between the fleshy, juicy purslane and the thin, milky spurge, you'll never mix them up again. What makes purslane a true power weed is its fat content, specifically omega-3 fatty acids. It actually contains more omega-3s than any other terrestrial leafy green. We're talking about the kind of heart-healthy fats you usually have to go out of your way to find in things like flaxseed or chia seeds. It's basically a vegan super oil growing in a crunchy little package. On top of that, it's loaded with vitamin E and C, making it a literal skin and brain health supplement that tastes a little like a lemon-flavored cucumber. It has a delightful juicy crunch that is incredible raw in salads or tucked into a sandwich. But if you want to cook it, the stems and leaves hold up beautifully to a quick 2-minute saute with garlic and a splash of vinegar. It softens slightly, but keeps its body, making it a perfect substantial wild green. And here's a tip for when you're out there looking. Purslane loves the heat. While other greens are wilting and turning bitter in the midsummer sun, purslane is just getting started. It's the perfect mid-season harvest when your garden lettuce has already given up. Next up is common mallow, often called cheeseweed, because its seed pods look like tiny rounded wheels of cheese. This is a plant that most people walk over every single day without realizing it's a relative of okra and hibiscus. In fact, I have a patch I literally have to step over to get into my backyard, and it's one of my favorite plants to forage. What makes mallow a powerhouse for beginners is its mucilaginous quality, which is just a fancy way of saying it has a natural thickness to it. Because of this, it's loaded with soothing fiber and antioxidants that are great for digestion. But where it really shines in the kitchen is as a nutritional thickener. If you're making a soup or stew and you want to boost the protein and vitamin content without using cornstarch or flour, you just toss in a handful of mallow leaves. It creates a rich, silky texture that feels like a gourmet meal. For identification, mallow is very friendly. Look for leaves that are shaped like a little rounded fan or a ruffled umbrella with 5 to 7 shallow lobes. They have a distinct crinkle to them and usually a little purple spot right where the leaf meets the stem. Every part of this plant is useful. You can eat the leaves raw in a salad for a mild, pleasant flavor, or you can harvest those little cheese wheel seeds. They have a delightful nutty crunch that makes them a perfect wild snack right off the ground. It's a hardy, resilient plant that thrives in North American soil. And once you recognize that ruffled leaf, you'll start seeing a free thickening agent and a high-fiber green everywhere you look. Next is the plant you've probably stepped on 1,000 times, plantain. Now, I'm not talking about the banana-like fruit you find in the grocery store. I'm talking about broadleaf or narrowleaf plantain, the natural band-aid of the wild world. These two are ubiquitous across North America, and they are the ultimate survival greens for beginners. Before we even talk about eating it, you need to know why this is the most famous plant in the backyard pharmacy. If you get a bee sting, a mosquito bite, or brush up against some stinging nettle, you just grab a plantain leaf, chew it up into a mesh, and put it right on the spot. It draws out the sting and stops the itch almost instantly. It's a powerful, memorable skill that works every single time. But back to the kitchen. Nutritionally, plantain is a heavy hitter. It's exceptionally high in vitamin A, vitamin C, and calcium. What really sets it apart is its durability. Many wild greens are delicate and wilt the second they hit the pan, but plantain leaves are tough and fibrous. Because of that, they hold up incredibly well in cooked dishes. If you like kale chips, you are going to love plantain chips. Just toss the leaves in a little oil and salt and bake them until they're crispy. They are a mineral-dense, savory snack that costs you absolutely nothing. And identification is a breeze because of one specific feature, the veins. Whether you're looking at the broadleaf version, which has wide egg-shaped leaves, or the narrow-leaf version, which has long, thin spear-like leaves that both have prominent parallel veins that run from the base all the way to the tip. If you snap the stem, those veins actually pull out like the strings in a stalk of celery. I love teaching people about plantain because it's the definition of hidden in plain sight. It thrives in compacted soil right along the edges of paths or in the middle of your backyard. It's a hardy, resilient green that provides a level of nutrition that's getting harder and harder to find in commercially grown produce. It's rugged, it's reliable, and it's one of the easiest aisles to shop in your own outdoor grocery store. To round out our list, we're looking at the wild violet. Now, most people see these as just a pretty spring flower, but in the world of nutrition, they are a superstar. If you're looking to bridge the gap between healthy and gourmet without spending a dime, this is your plant. What makes violets a true power weed is their incredible concentration of vitamin C and vitamin A. In fact, by weight, violet leaves contain more vitamin C than oranges and more vitamin A than spinach. We're talking about a high-dose antioxidant boost that's just sitting there in your lawn. Identification for beginners is almost foolproof. You're looking for those iconic heart-shaped leaves with slightly rounded teeth along the edges. In the spring, the bright purple or white flowers make them impossible to miss. But the leaves remain a nutritional gold mine long after the blooms are gone. The best part about violets is their versatility. The leaves have a mild, slightly sweet flavor with a hint of that same thickness we found in the mallow, making them a perfect base for a salad. And the flowers? They're completely edible. You can toss them on top of a meal to make it look like it came out of a five-star kitchen, or even freeze them into ice cubes for a high-end touch to your water. It's the perfect example of how weeds aren't just survival food, they are beautiful, high-quality ingredients that just happen to be free. There are so many delicious wild weeds that I can name, things like garlic mustard, chickweed, and wood sorrel, and we'll definitely get around to those in future videos. But these 7 are your foundation. They are high-protein, vitamin-rich heavyweights that can fundamentally change how you look at your backyard and your grocery bill. If you'd like to keep learning how to turn the weeds in your yard into a gourmet, nutrient-dense pantry, make sure to hit that subscribe button. But if you want to go deeper, then head on over and join our community on Substack. I'm calling on you experienced foragers in the comments section. What's your favorite weed? How do you like to cook it? I'm sure some of us need ideas to get started. Thanks for watching, and as always, eat the weeds.